Woo. Cool. Thank you, students. This is the first time I've been in front of this many people talking about visual effects. First of all, that was from Method Studios I used to work at, and that was their shot breakdowns of the film Outlaw King on Netflix. As you might have noticed, I talk with a Swedish accent, so if you do have some problems understanding me, please let me know. Like I said, my name is Michael Norback. I am a digital matte painter, environment artist, and I've been working with feature films for the last year and a half, and those are the latest projects that have been released that I worked on. There's a couple other things I worked on that has not yet been released and I can't talk about. So like he said before that, I'm here to explain you kind of my journey of getting a job, and I want to give you guys as much information as possible, what it took me to get my foot into industry, and hopefully it can help you guys out as well. So, and I'm going to start off talking a little bit where it all started for me. Sorry. We're going to start off with matte painting. Some of you guys are probably very new, like first-year students. Matte painting is a technique they used in the early days of filmmaking, late 1800s. They used to paint onto matte glass to project onto footage and to get massive environments. And that's why it's called matte painting, because it wasn't matte glass. But today, it's all digital and no glass or all paints used any longer. I use Photoshop most of the days. I use Nuke, I use Clarice, I use Substance Painter. Those are the main softwares that I used to work as a matte painter and environment artist. And we can talk more about technical things about matte painting when we've got questions later on if you want, but I'll tell you my journey. So that's me when I'm 8 years old, dressed up as Darth Vader. Made my own costume. I was so proud. I was obsessed with Star Wars and these other films, and I used to build model kits. Yeah, back in the day you had model kits, and I used to like film them with the VCH camera, not the digital cameras. So I really wanted to work with this stuff as a small child, and so got a bit older, and I want to go for my dream. I decided to go to this place. So AIE with the old logo, and that's me when I was a student here. So a little punk rocker, yeah. So, that is a 3D model of myself I did for my projects, very long time ago. And do you guys want to see my extremely well done reel from back then? So, and keep in mind, technology won't as advanced as it is for you guys. So.
There we go.
Very classy, so.
And then you've just got to click on it.
Yeah, let's see. All right. No, that was embarrassing. So I started out here. I had Tom and Dan as my teachers. So Dan taught me Photoshop. Thank you, Dan, wherever you are. And let's go back to my PDF. So as you see, everybody needs to start somewhere. When I started here, I barely knew how to use a computer. Had zero interest in computers. I was more interested in going out playing like skateboarding and playing with firecrackers when you can buy them as kids. so I did 2 years here. Did the diploma screen, and me being Swedish, I grew up here as a kid. I wanted to go back and kind of knew where I came from, and I decided to go back to Europe. So I decided to try to give an application for double negative. I did not get the job. My stuff wasn't good enough at that point. So I decided to go to university in Sweden. But before that happened, I have to say my grades were terrible. I'm dyslexic, and grades were shocking. I could never get into uni in Australia. But just because I did the AIE and I had a working portfolio, with the work I've done, I was able to get my foot into university in Sweden. So, and at university, didn't learn as many cool techniques as you do here. It's mostly more theory, more of working in groups, and just doing like learning mathematics and other things that are not as focused onto industry as the AIE is. So yeah, well, the important thing I learned here was that yeah, how to teach myself, look for information yourself, not just going to a teacher that knows everything. You had to like do research, and I learned that at university. I did a thesis there as well at the Department of Neuroscience in Uppsala, where I did a lot of medical visual stuff, showing like brain cells, rats, and nerves, so they can show these to clients and governments so they can get funding for their research. So that was a part of my thesis. And from my thesis, I was able to get an internship at a small company in Sweden called Oddville. This company does a lot of range of things, from television commercials to medicine to websites and so on. So I had an internship there for about 2.5 months. It was a very steep learning curve doing an internship, so I was very lucky to get that. And from there, my internship finished, and at the same time, I was playing in punk rock, having a bit of a silly lifestyle back then, so it was a bit messy. I was touring around Europe. I released a vinyl record on a German label, sold about 700 copies of that. And from the techniques that I learned here with Photoshop, I was able to get a bit of money on the side doing illustrations for bands. And you can look at my portfolio later on, where I've done over 40, 50 record sleeves for like records in California, Australia, Sweden, and so on. That's kind of built up my portfolio when it came to art, which will help me with matte painting later on in the future. So about the same time, this is like 2010, recession hit Europe. There was no work, and keep in mind, my English is not the best, so you will find spelling mistakes on my my thing here. And it was quite depressing. A lot of companies went under. I decided I would give Australia a go, because you had a bigger film industry here. So I came over back here, and I got together a new show reel. I got no work from that show reel, but I did win a competition by theloop.com to get my portfolio looked at by industry people. And that was a very interesting learning curve as well. Like when you're that new, you're like, oh yeah, I want to talk to these industry people. I want to listen to everything that they have to say. I learned pretty quickly that's not a good thing sometimes. Because so when I got up there, I had my portfolio here with me, and it was mixed with people who do graphic design, and they have a completely different way of seeing things than a visual effects artist will have their portfolio looked at. So some of the feedback wasn't, it's good for a graphic designer point of view, but not for somebody who wants to do visual effects. But at least you get to practice and talking to industry people, which is very, very important. You need to be social to get your foot in. So I sent 50 emails. I'll show you the reel I did there that got me no work. So you know what level I was at that point in my life. So this is 2010, 11. So this is stuff from my internship and the other company. do apologize for the quality. Yep, so that reel got me no work. So at this point, I was pretty upset, kind of giving up at that point. So, oops, how do we get back into this again? Bum, 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 full screen. Yeah, companies shutting down. Same thing happened in Australia here. I had 2 job interviews with 2 small companies. Was nothing that, it was a waste of my time, those 2 interviews, I can tell you that. So very negative, but another cool thing about learning stuff like this, you can learn other skills. So I started doing laboring, sweeping the floor at this company that worked with the CNC machines, like operated like programmable machines that would cut out objects for you. So I could pick up CAD in like 2 weeks and programming this machine, like cutting out pieces. So the skills I got from schools like this, I was able to get another career as well. So did that for a while. I built my own electric guitar. I did that from scratch. I'm very proud of that. And one problem was that I got extremely sick working with at this place because they were machining material that is extremely toxic, and they didn't give me proper safety equipment. So I got very sensitive to certain chemicals. I had to leave this workplace and do something else. And it was a very negative part of my life. So I was still doing the punk rock thing. These are 2 of my punk rock friends, dumpster diving. Pretty low point of my life, I can tell you that. So there was a lot of drinking involved, sick from work. Having idiot friends like this is not a good thing. And my brother-in-law was dying from cancer as well. So I'm like, I need to do something to change my life. I need to do something. I can't keep on living like this. So I decided that I would give visual effects another go. And I'm going to explain what it took for me to, like, this has been years of not working in it. And I decided to go back into it. So, and the thing that got me back into it was networking. So these are 2 of my friends. One, this is Damir. He's worked as a lighter for massive companies like MPC in the UK, and he's worked for Luma, Animal Logic. He worked on like Jungle Book and so on, and The Martian as well. And to the left, with the nice T-shirt over there, that is my friend David. He is one of the smartest people I know. He works with Houdini for plastic wax. He does all their fluid systems and smoke. Really smart guy. So these guys are people I met at university and in the punk community. So it's really important to network. So that's the thing that got me into the job that I was going to get, was through help from people. So from there, that's oh yeah, we're at Iron Maiden as well. Yeah. So what I had to do to actually get me into action to get a new showreel done and to go for this job that I really, really wanted, I ended up selling 500 of my rare punk records to build a computer that could handle the visual effects that I want to do. I moved back home to recover from being sick at this company. I kept very positive, intelligent friends like the ones I showed you up there. And don't hang around with people that drink too much and other substance abuse. It kind of brings you down if you really want to like focus on something that's like career-wise and like something you really, really want. So that's what I did to change my situation. So this is me moving back to Canberra from being sick. I was working at Qantas, and that's Hugh Jackman, Mr. Wolverine. So that's the closest I got to a movie star. Yeah. So yeah, so that was pretty cool. I was working at Qantas. I worked here in Canberra for 3 years, 3.5 years and a half year in Sydney. I moved to Sydney because I wanted to get my foot into the industry. And at the same time I was working here, I was working on my reel. It can get quite frustrating when you're working at the same time. Like you don't have much motivation, self-confidence can be a bit down sometimes, but if you only spend like an hour a day and do a little bit of work, and sometimes you might do a bit more, you eventually get to a really amazing showreel. Like I had to go through 3 or 4 showreels to get my dream job. So I just want to let you know that even if you just do 1 reel, keep on working on it, and just don't give up. So that's kind of what I'm trying to say to you guys here. So let's go to the next one. After 4 years, I got together my film camera, my equipment to build my reel, and this is the reel that got me my foot into Method Studios, which was Illura back then. And I'll play that for you now. Keep in mind, I did almost every single thing on this.
Okay, in 3, 2, 1, fire, boom!
So that was the reel that got me the job, and as you see, I put some credits in there. I had industry people that gave me feedback on my reel and what they wanted to see in a reel. These people are not the HR people that would get you the job, but they know what they're looking for. So what I got on this reel was all the entry-level jobs. For example, rotoscoping is pretty much an entry-level job. Camera tracking is an entry-level job. But then I also showed off the other techniques that I'm more interested in. Like I was very passionate about matte painting. It took me a couple of years to decide I wanted to do that. It was when I was at university, after maybe 2 years here and a year in university, I decided I wanted to become a matte painter. That was the main interest I had. So, but to get my foot in, I decided to put everything in there as much as possible, comp, everything. So I wanted to get my foot in. And I got that done. I sent to a couple companies, didn't hear anything for about 3 weeks. Then coming back to networking, my friend David knew a girl who worked at Method Studios and told me they're looking for rotoscope artists. Send an application in now. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna send it in, see what happens. But that was a very strange moment for me when I got a response. All right, so I got my foot into Method Studios. This is a group photo. And I'm on the top left somewhere. You can't really see me, I don't know. But this was one of the coolest experiences of my life, to go into a massive studio. What happened was I sent my reel off. I got an email and it said, when can you start? There was no interview, nothing. It's just, when can you start? They were desperate for people. So I said I could start on Monday. And I was driving a forklift at the moment in Sydney, packing dog food. So I was like, yay! So I got the message when I was on the bus on a Friday to going home from work, and I just text my boss, I'm not coming in on Monday. It's like, what? Sorry, I don't care. See ya. So that was like one of the scariest moments. I thought it was a practical joke done by my friends, like a fake email, but it wasn't. So I got the address, got there. I have never been so nervous in my life to go to a place. And pretty much I got in there, sat on a desk and started working on the spot. There was no introduction really, it was just sit down and work. And the first film I worked on was Wrinkle in Time. I was doing rotoscoping on Wrinkle in Time. And I'm sitting there shitting myself. So, but lucky enough, it's very important, like when I said networking, talking to people, I asked the guy next to me, how would you approach this shot? Because I've only done one rotoscoping thing in my life, and that was the guy with the skiing. And he came and gave me a bit of advice, and I folded, and he sat down and had a chat with me, and I started producing stuff, delivering. So it's very, very important to listen to the guys you work with. Don't be arrogant, like listen to these guys. And not listen to one guy, but multiple people. Get as much advice as possible when you start into industry. Because there will always be somebody that knows more than you do. So, and from there, okay, let's go forward a bit here. So I'm going to talk more about what it took for me to get the jobs and to become what took me to become a matte painter. Don't be scared to fail. I failed multiple times. I didn't get a job interview that I really wanted. I kept on doing new show reels, trying to do something that's more impressive, try to keep myself up to date with software. When I started, I learned how to use 3D Studio Max and Combustion, which is a compositing software, and which is not used any longer. So I had to teach myself Nuke and other softwares as well. And persistence, just keep on going. Just keep doing new reel. Don't give up. Like I know this is an art. You get very emotional in your art, and you feel, oh, I can't really get it done. And but if you just keep on going, working, you will eventually get there in some way or another. And back to networking. Network is really important. That is what got me the next couple of jobs. It's just by working with people and talking to them, and you have to be a bit social. I know that we who like computer games and doing art, most of us are introverts, but you really need to practice, get out there and talk and so on. And if you meet industry people, go up and have a chat with them and have a talk, good practice and ask questions, so it's important. And another thing, this is a small industry, don't be arrogant, don't be an asshole. It gets around really quickly. So, and keep away from gossip, because there will be people talking gossip and it can get back and bite you. So that's another very important thing in this industry. If there's people that you reckon are bad, bosses will see that eventually, but always keep in mind, there is a lot of good people in this industry. Like the thing that I really love about this industry is that you got people all around the world from different viewpoints of how they live their lives, and it's really fun to have a chat with them. But there's some rotten apples, so you have to be careful. Like I've heard stories of people having their work stolen. Like they've gone to interviews and they said they did something that had nothing to do with that. And so there's stuff like that in the industry as well. And another important thing is to do is tell people what you want. The way I got my foot into matte painting was to tell my lead that I was interested in it. And I told him that I've really been focused on it, but it'd probably take me a couple of years to get my foot in there, doing one of these junior jobs first, like rotoscoping and so on. But I showed him my reel, and it's like, oh, that's really good, yeah. So after 6 weeks of doing rotoscoping, he comes up to me and says, oh yeah, HR are looking for somebody to help out with the matte painting department to do small stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I got everything ready. Yeah, I got matte paintings, I got Photoshop stuff all ready to show you on my reel, all done. So I just walked into the office and showed the lead of matte painting all done, and bam, I got moved on to onto the matte painting department. There was other people trying to get in there as well, but they had nothing ready. They had to go home and look for old stuff on old hard drives and so on, and some people just couldn't get the stuff together. So if you are prepared, know what you want, it's a bigger possibility that you get there a bit quicker. And from there, yeah, I kept working on that, developing my skills, learned so much. I thought I knew Photoshop before starting at this company. No, I did not. Like I spent a lot of time doing illustrations for bands and so on, but it's completely different techniques when you use in the film industry. And from there, another thing that will help you out is get a LinkedIn site for yourself. Don't go out there and just add any random visual effects artists. I get that all the time. I get people like Czech Republic that wants to like become a matte painter. I'm like, I can't help you. I don't know you. But what I would recommend you is to add all the recruiters for the companies. They will put on advertising on LinkedIn about we are now looking for these kind of people, and they are probably the best people to connect to. So then you know what's happening in the industry as well. So I would recommend that. And another thing that I did to get that job is that I put up a website, I put my portfolio on the website, and I put my show reel onto the website as well using Vimeo. When I first started going for jobs, we used to give out DVDs. It's a bit old school now, but that's how I started out with, and I had my portfolio in an actual portfolio. So it's changed now, so that's what I would recommend. I don't know what much more I can tell you about how to get your foot into industry, but it's hard to get in there. Some people get in there really quickly. Like I've heard people take a 6-week course and bam, they're into the company, and other people like myself, it took years to get in there. So it can be a bit of a struggle, but I just want to motivate you guys to keep on going if you are stuck in the situation I was in. So, and I think that's it, and we can start with questions and so on if you want. Yeah.
So a quick clap for that. That was
right. Thank you.
I'm going to start throwing out some questions, but the moment anyone has anything, pop your hands up. Chances are I might not see you on my first pass through, but yeah, definitely get some questions ready to go. I'm going to start. What was it about matte painting in particular that drew you to it?
I really loved environments. I was not interested in character animation or anything like that. I just love environments. Like I love history myself. Like I went to Rome. I love the buildings. That's kind of what sold me on that. It's like I like painting stuff and like drawing. Yeah.
Cool. And I guess in your day-to-day role, how much of your time is spent doing 2D work, like in Photoshop, versus working in 3D in Maya or something like that?
Oh, it depends what kind of project it is. When I worked on Skyscraper with The Rock, Johnson, it was a lot of Photoshop. On Outlooking, I created a lot of environments. I did a lot of modeling, actually, funny enough. We do have modeling departments, but sometimes they need a bit of help, and I could model, so they let me do a bit of that. And what's been starting to happen now in the industry is that it's coming more and more 3D objects into matte painting as well. Everything is getting high res, up to 4K. It's really, really difficult to find high res images. So those two things are getting combined. Back in the day, it was just Photoshop, and you need to know a bit of 3D nowadays if you want to get into that. So,
how was that decision made to go 2D versus 3D? Is it just someone would just say, I don't know, let's do it 3D, or is there a
well, depends. If you got a massive sequence of shots in the same environment, it might be cheaper and more time efficient just to have 3D models that you project some paint on top of that. So it depends how many shots, and your leads have a sit down and have a bit of a chat. So if that answers the question.
Yeah, that's cool. What's some of the main skills you think people wanting to get into digital matte painting should focus on now?
Now, grading. If you want to focus on matte painting, yeah, grading, it's train your eye to see colors. That takes a bit of a while. It took me a while to get that correctly. Grading means matching one color of a picture onto another one so they all look like they're the same image. So that's something I would recommend. And learn perspective. Perspective drawing was very useful for me. And if you want to get the matte painting, another thing that I did as well at university, my university course was creative computer graphics in Sweden, and it was a lot of programming and networking, like computer networks and stuff like that I had zero interest in. So I decided to take concept art courses over the internet to get my grades up as well. And concept art, design, all that helps out to understand light, how that reflects onto objects, and concept art was a very good course to learn basics in matte painting as well. So.
What, in your day, as much as you're allowed to talk about it, in a day-to-day role, are you given a shot and very clear instructions of this is what we want from you, or is it this is roughly where we want things, whatever you decide, Michael, we'll trust?
Most of the time, I get my CG supervisor or my lead to sit down. This is the brief we got from client. This is what they want to see. I put together something, and I show the CG supervisor. He puts some notes on that, and he'll show the client. Or sometimes they'll come up to me, "Hey, Michael, can you do some concept ideas for, like, give me 5 ideas for this one shot. I need a design for this certain object inside the scene." And then I'll put together a couple of designs and show my supervisor, and he shows the client, and get feedback from the director. So, yeah.
What's, looking back at some of your old show reels, like the ones that didn't get you any work, and even the ones that did, what's the things that you think really stood out to get that job at Method?
The thing that stood on that reel is that I spent so much time. Like, I built a whole green screen room, costumes for my brother-in-law who wasn't that. He helped me out. He passed away later on. He was one of the guys that motivated me to do this. So, because life is short, so I want to get one dream in my life to happen. So.
Do you know roughly how long that those parts of the show reel took to get together?
The last one?
Yes.
Well, the thing that took me a long time with that was just learning Nuke and how to get all things working together. Like, I would contact my friends going, okay, how do I connect this node to node? How do I solve this problem? And they would send me links on tutorials about how to solve that problem. So, and as well as that, I was working at the same time. I was working shift work. It wears you down, so you don't have much motivation to do anything. So.
When you were sending your reel out to studio after studio, do they ever email back and say, this is what you need to work on your portfolio, or is it just silence?
Silence and say, or we're not looking for anybody at the moment. They will only contact you back when you have experience in the industry. That's the only time they start writing you back. Can we have you on your books? How much is your daily rate, and so on. But yeah, in the beginning, I did 50 emails. I got 2 responses. So that was in the beginning.
Those responses were just saying no?
One was, I love your work, but we don't use Maya. That was, and it ended there. I'm like, but I can learn this really quickly. Like, no. So, but yeah.
Most of the bigger studios that you've spent time with, are they all using similar, and even the smaller ones, are they using similar software like Maya and Nuke?
Maya is standard. It's just some of them. I heard some studios, mostly in gaming, they use 3 Studio Max, and it's slowly dying. So
take that, Max.
Yeah.
When you get stuck at the studio and there's a technique that you're not aware of, what's your point of contact? Do you go to a lead, or do you just pull up YouTube and be like, what is...
Going on YouTube takes a lot longer time. If I got a guy next to me that has 15 years of experience working on Mad Max and Thor Ragnarok, I'm going to go and talk to him. No, yeah, so yeah, that's what I do. If it's something that's out of their reach, I will go and have a bit of a read about, at the moment, I'm trying to teach myself more like the tools for Photoshop and Nuke, learning Python and programming makes you a lot more valuable in the future, so that's...
Cool.
Yeah.
I guess on that, where do you see, or where do you hope your career goes from here? Like, is learning stuff like Python and other scripting so that you can get those more advanced positions?
Yeah, I want to become a map painting TD, technical director. You need to know a bit more about programming and tools and a bit of everything else. So, yeah. But I'm still taking courses. I'm going to take more art courses on the weekends just to further develop my skills. Like, I really want to keep up my skills with oil paints and watercolors and stuff like that to keep that in my system, not just sitting there in Photoshop cutting out images and grading. Cool. So I still want to get that.
Does working with traditional media like that give you a different perspective when you are working in Nuke, or is it more just...
It's good practice. It's yeah, well, there's techniques in that you can learn into the projects that you do. For example, like sometimes I might have to design something like an artwork that needs to be on a wall of some building, and you have to learn that kind of design that they're using. Like, is it medieval looking? Is it Art Deco? Like, you have to like do a bit of research. There's a lot of research in this industry as well. So.
How much? And any questions out there just yet? No. Cool. Oh yeah.
You said when you started working at Method that you basically had to learn all this new stuff in Photoshop that you hadn't known before that. Is that because they were just using really advanced techniques that you hadn't done before, or simply because in the time since you graduated here, the industry had moved on?
Sorry, we'll just repeat the question.
Yeah. I'll repeat it. You were asking me if the technology had developed or changed from when I started here many years back to when I got into the job. Is that the question? Yeah.
Pretty much why you had to learn all of that.
Okay. Because when you do matte painting, like when I was here, I was learning texturing, a bit different techniques from what I do. Like you use non-destructive workflow in matte painting, so you don't want to destroy anything that you do till you get to a certain point. The file gets too big, then you might have to squash it together. But it's just that I was never using curves before and masks, and before I was working with matte painting, that was the main things that I had to learn, and how to color correct things properly with your eye and not using match color in Photoshop. So you have to learn the tools in there and then organize yourself that someone else can take over the project from you. So not just slamming on 150 unnamed layers for the next person to take up. Does that answer your question, or? Yeah.
What's some of the most common mistakes you see people who want to get into digital map painting? What kind of mistakes are they making? Are they focusing in the wrong areas?
No, well, it's just you need to train your eye. Like in the beginning, you're like, oh, I just got these 2 images and I got them matching pretty good together. But you don't realize that it's a wrong resolution, the scale. Like scale is a massive thing that can be wrong when you do matte painting. You want to make that look correct. So you might have, you have to match images together that look in the same world space, if that makes sense. And I've seen stuff with a really bad perspective as well.
Would you say that's the biggest difference between someone starting out in the industry and someone that's been there a long time, is the fact that they haven't trained their
and they're a lot quicker. They're a lot quicker. They've been in the industry as well. Like Like I am a junior/mid artist at the moment, but you see some of these senior guys always pump up stuff in like a full matte painting in like 3 days. It would take me about a week and a half to do, or 2 weeks, to do. So
is being quick very important, or do they care?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I guess it's hard. Is there any examples that you could mention that of a rough timeline of how long you were given for a task? Like say a castle on a hill or something like that. Do you have?
I was given about maybe 3-4 days to do that. Keep in mind I was a junior then, they will give you a bit more time. When you do shots for trailers, it's normally like, we need to get this done now, like stress. We've done renders out of lighting that aren't good enough. Can you guys fix this up for us? Because you might do a sequence of renders that might take a whole night to render out, and it might be quicker just to do a paint over on top of that.
So being able to know both the correct way of doing a technique and also the quick way of doing it is very important if you do just have to get something out there.
Well, the thing, another thing I need to say about the techniques when it comes to matte painting is that you want to have clean masks when you work with anything. Mask is when you cut out an object and you don't have floating artifacts everywhere. And that's the biggest complaint that you get from compositors to matte painters, that you have a very messy mask. Yeah, and that's another newbie mistake that you need to clean up.
Going back to before you were mentioning you're still practicing painting and things like that, how often are you going and practicing both traditional techniques, new techniques that you could apply to work? Is it like...
Not when I'm working.
Not when you're working, okay.
Of course, they work you like slaves. So, yeah, sometimes you're looking at, some days at the end of a production, the crunch time, you'll be working like 10 to 15 hours a day. And if you're really unlucky, you'll be working every day of the week as well. So it's pretty full on.
So is it during those crunch times where you might not be researching new skills as much, but whenever
you don't have time, you're just pumping out shots.
Mm-hmm. So when you get home, are you sitting in front of the computer again to just
you have a beer and you pass out, yeah.
You were talking about how networking is super important. Is there a good way to network, or is it just going to like SIGGRAPH or any industry talk?
Right here, you got people right here. Some of these people here might actually get a job in the future. Talk to people. Like I had contact with Tom for years. I would have a chat with him when I couldn't get in. I came back to Australia. I came and had a chat with him about thinking about coming and doing a new course or something like that. And it's good to talking to people like that. Like have contact with teachers, everything. So they know they have contacts as well. For example, I still have contact with my teacher in Sweden. She was head of NASA in 3D, and she has heaps of connections as well. So be nice to your teachers.
And so it'll often be also like your peers and things like that, which
peers,
someone might get a job first and then they'll be able to give you that.
That's what happened to me with my 2 friends I had up there. They look very ridiculous. Yeah, they're the ones that helped me out, and they were my reference as well for my job as well. So,
any other questions? Yep, Finn.
You've already mentioned a bit about software. Like, what software, primary stuff, would you recommend for students to focus in on to do matte painting, for example?
Well, I would never recommend that people just focus on matte painting first, because it's extremely hard to get your foot into that. I would. I will tell you. Okay, you asking me about what softwares to learn to get into that. I'll get back into that first, and I'll talk about another thing as well. Photoshop, number 1 at the moment. Nuke is extremely important. You're doing projections in that. And Maya, those are your 3 major softwares to learn if you want to do environments and matte painting. Those are your bread and butter. So, because you build a lot of, some studios will let you do all the modeling yourself for projections. Some studios will not let you even touch Nuke or 3D Studio Max. No, I mean Maya, yeah. And what I recommend for students is to learn, to get your foot into the door. I would recommend you guys to learn Nuke, which is, industry standard right now. There's more jobs people working with Nuke than anything else in this industry. So, but I would highly recommend that you also learn 3D as well. There's a lot of compositors that I've met that on the big bucks, they don't even know how to UV map. So.
I think I saw Tom get the biggest smile when you said everyone should be focusing on Nuke, which is really cool. Is there any other areas that you think people should keep an eye on because they're the roles that studios are always looking to fill?
Yes, camera tracking, massive. Anything that's large amount of work to do is rotoscoping and 3D tracking are the major things. Those are the biggest teams that you have on there. So you get your foot in there, but have your reel ready with other things to possibly grow yourself into another department into the company. So that's what I would recommend.
Yeah, at the back.
With the place that you currently work, how much creative freedom do they give you outside of that? Like, are you allowed to do all your own stuff after hours, or do they still have like you can't work on anything unless it's approved by the studio?
So the question was that if you're allowed to work on your own projects after hours, is that it? After, there is none. There's no time for that. If they see you working on your own projects, they don't want you there. Yeah, so.
And so that's like after, so when you get home after you've had your beer, maybe you passed out for a little bit.
Oh, you can
and
do
work
stuff
back
at
up.
home, but you don't do it at workplace.
No,
Like,
no.
you don't use their equipment.
There's no, they don't mind if you're doing stuff in your spare time. If you have the energy for it, they're
Your spare time is your spare time. So yeah.
Cool.
So
Nice.
but
This is one that I'm just super curious of. Why did you choose that era with all your costumes and the setting for the green screen work that you did for your showreel that got you work at Method?
well, I want to get a bit of a different look. Most showreels you see will be like the time that we have now. I want to get something that looks a bit more artistic. I thought that the 17th century looked a bit more arty, so I wanted to create a bit more interesting environments to really show off. And yeah, my lovely sister Catherine, she did the costume design for that as well. So yeah, if that makes sense.
I guess one of the, I'm nearly out of the questions I want to ask, but you talked briefly about how you entered a competition when you were.
Yeah.
Do you recommend students enter competitions to get their work seen?
Enter anything that you can get your foot into. Like there's matte painting competitions online as well on YouTube and so on, and there's modeling competitions as well. It's just good to, then you get feedback from industry people as well. So I would highly recommend that as well. So. Sorry, going back to the loop for the conference I went to. This is going to be. I'm not going to say any names or any companies, but I had one industry person gave me some advice. I told him that I wanted to get into environments, and the feedback I got from this individual was, "There's no such thing as an environment artist." And I looked at him like, "Are you serious?" Yeah, and this guy worked in the big industry and in like one of the big companies that I want to work for, and got very confused out of that. But after starting being in this industry, you notice that some people don't know what they're talking about. So some people are able to slip through the gaps somehow.
How do you filter that kind of advice out? Because I'm sure as someone who's starting, it might
Well,
be like,
you only can do that when you know more people that work in the industry and you get advice from everybody. Then you know, oh, that guy's full of shit. But,
do you, to keep your work improving, are you constantly asking the leads for feedback when you're in the studio? Or?
All the time, I'm asking, how would you approach this? I spend a lot of time as well, like painting like bullet wounds and flesh wounds and so on. And I'll go up to a senior, like, what's the best way to paint blood onto a character to make it look photorealistic? So, and how to learn techniques, how to make things look damaged, and so on.
Nice. Yeah. And is that, some people might feel unsure about approaching people in the workplace to get that kind of feedback, but it is a very important thing. And
yeah, be cheeky.
and those people are keen to give feedback as well?
Most people are. It's this industry, there's a lot of lovely people in here. They are more than happy to help most people. There's some oddballs out there. There's a lot of strange people out there as well, but most people, they're happy to help you out, so yeah.
One thing that I found super interesting is how you've rarely stayed in the one place for a long time. Is that just how the industry works? Will you be in Sydney 1 year, then the next moving to Adelaide?
Yeah, that is, well, especially in the film industry, it's 6 months to 1 year contracts often, and then you get a lot of companies get money from the government for having film projects in different states, and the laws might change, so it might be cheaper for another company to have their film project done in Adelaide or Sydney or Queensland. It changes all the time with the different laws that come into place. So yes, I do move around quite a bit now. I've worked in Sweden, I worked in Sydney, and now I'll be working at the mill in Adelaide soon. So,
is that difficult to be moving around like that to a bunch of different studios, or I guess is there anything you do to make it a little bit easier?
Well, me growing up, I've been a little bit of a gypsy myself. My parents moved around every 3 years to different countries, so I'm kind of used to it. So it doesn't bother me too much. But for other people, it could be a bit of an adventure as well. I got a lot of friends that are like, oh yeah, I'm going to go to Vancouver, I'm going to see that. I'm going to go to the UK to work and experience new things. A lot of these people find that quite exciting as well. So, but a lot of the older guys that work in the industry, they have a lot of experience. They are more able to get full-time positions, so they're more able to stay put in one place. So,
how keen are studios to hire people from overseas early in their career? Is it something that you can't really expect to get till you've been in the industry a while?
Well, for me, I was expecting no one to help me move. So I decided to move from Canberra, working Qantas, and I got transferred from Qantas to Sydney because that's where all the companies I want to work for. It's a very small chance that they will pay for your flights and so on in the beginning. It's only when you get some names, some credits under your names. So.
And I guess those places that are in Sydney or even the Mill in Adelaide, do you think they favour people who are already living there, or do they just want the most talented people?
I don't know the guys in Adelaide very well yet, the recruitment people there yet, but sometimes they do struggle finding people. I think they'll go look for local people first, then they try to get in, because they need to pay for people's visas and stuff like that. So, yeah, so that's why I always put on my CV. I can show that later as well, how I wrote up my CVs. I always write Swedish, Australian citizen, so that they don't have to bother with trying to get me visas and stuff. So.
I guess while we go to one more question out there, do you want to pull up your resume?
Well, I can show you my entry-level CV to see how I put it together, because I want you guys to learn a bit about how to get your foot into the door. Okay, this is the first one I did. This one got me nothing. I tried to do really graphic. I put in all school, all the digital, like all the work I've done. I separated to films and key skills. Like no HR person would sit here and read this. I can tell you that.
So keeping it as short as possible is always handy?
Depends what you do. If you're doing more programming stuff like tools and stuff, you probably want to write more about what kind of languages that you're programming in and tools, and that might be a bit more interesting. But most guys, they just look at your show reel and okay, he's done a bit of that, he's done a bit of schooling, okay. This guy looks like kind of what he's doing. But this one did not get me any work. But they don't really, they will look at it, but it's not, keep it short. They got piles of DVDs and emails to go through every day. Like sometimes it takes up to 6 weeks to get a response from a HR as well. So this is my last one actually. So now when I actually got a bit of films behind me, I can set up a CV more like this. Just the companies I worked for, what position I had there. I was a junior match moving artist. I've been a junior DMP artist, generalist, and I put all the skills and software that I use, so they kind of have an understanding of what I know. So what else was I going to say? Oh yeah, when I was working for Slate FX, I was not a matte painter there. I did matte painting, but I was a bit more of a generalist. I did mostly 3D match moving and camera tracking. This actually helped my skills in matte painting a lot, because in matte painting you have to project onto objects, and if the projection is not following the footage, it slides. And if you don't know camera tracking, you're wondering, what's going on here? Why is this not working? And then if you learn that skill, you can problem solve a lot quicker. So that's another thing I would recommend, to know a little bit of that skill at least. So yeah, and having good references is a good idea as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
Any other questions out there? Yeah.
If you want to work in an industry overseas, then should you be moving to that country before you, or like?
Depends what level you're at. If you're lucky enough being a junior and they want you to move there, I'll say go.
But like, is there any way you can just like send them your show reel online, and then if they say yeah, and then?
Well, I have some friends that they get a working visa for Canada. Canada at the moment is the biggest hub for visual effects. So what's happened to two of my friends, they got the tickets there. If you're under 25, you can get a working visa over there. They have some rules about that. So They will just go over there and have a holiday and at the same time apply for jobs over there. So if you're able to do that, do it. So, but the only thing that can happen then, if you start off in Canada, that you'll be on a lot lower wage than you would over here, maybe. Yeah.
And one of our recent grads who was talking about this last year, he spoke about how the place he applied for initially rejected his application because he was still in Australia. But when he just emailed them back, because I think they said they weren't looking for international talent at the time, he got back to them saying, I've got my visa, I'm ready to go over there in the next few weeks. And that got him to the next round of interviews as well. So it can be a tricky thing. Yeah. Well, for me, when I went to Method, there was no job interview. It was just, when can you start? So that when they're desperate for people that have skills, they'll get you in. So, but it's tricky is not to give up. Another major thing is timing as well. Sometimes there is no work, and you send to companies and nothing happens, and you might think, oh, I'm not that good, but no, it's just that there's no work. So go spend all your money to see movies that have a lot of visual effects in them, so we can keep Michael employed. Any other questions out there? Or yep.
So in your creative career, I'm guessing you would have experienced quite a lot of times with crunch. How did you balance that with, I guess, mental health, and I guess when you're outside of work and in work, how did you balance that?
That's a very good question. He was asking about mental health and your body as well, healthy when you're on crunch time. You're sitting in front of a computer for 15, 10 hours, almost straight. You eat your lunch in front of the computer pretty much. You don't get a break. A lot of people get sick doing that. A lot of the guys will go to the gym at lunchtime in a group once or twice a week. And it's a tight community in this industry, so the guys might go play soccer together and stuff like that. So try to get involved in those things. My mistake is I did not. I end up getting a bit of stomach problems. It's better now, but try to keep a little bit of exercise in there. It's really hard, I know, but you need to do that. You can get really sick and get back problems otherwise, and people are using standing desks as well to maybe help their backs as well. So does that answer your question? Oh. Yeah, cool, thank you.
Nice. Oh,
yeah.
How often do different departments work together, like rotoscoping and map painting and that sort of thing, or are you generally just you do your thing?
Well,
sorry, the question was how closely do the different departments work together?
Yeah, rotoscoping would not work with map painting. They would work with comp. They sit pretty close together when I was working in the big studios. When it comes to map painting, we would be pretty close to two different departments. It would be the modeling department when we got big environments, and the compositors are the main guys that you work together with, because I might set up a nuke script for the compositors and they'll finish off the shot. So if that makes sense. Yeah.
Nice. Join me in thanking Michael for coming out and speaking to us.
Thank you. Thank you.